The twin suns of Avaris Prime bled a crimson hue across the sky, their dying light casting long skeletal shadows over the towering gallows. The air was thick with anticipation, humming with the murmurs of thousands of gathered spectators. Some had come for entertainment, others out of duty, and a few, those who knew what this execution might bring, watched in uneasy silence. At the heart of the spectacle stood the condemned, a human woman, bound at the wrists, her white dress torn and stained with blood, yet still standing tall. Her raven-black hair fell in tangled waves past her shoulders, her emerald eyes defiant, despite the bruises that marred her pale skin. Her name was Anya Velkor, and she was guilty of the one crime the Galactic Empire would not tolerate: defiance. The Ida's towering gallows, a mechanical structure of steel and hydraulics, loomed over her like a beast prepared to devour. Beneath its shadow, Imperial guards in gleaming obsidian armor stood in formation, their energy rifles held across their chests, their faces expressionless behind reflective visors. Avaris Prime, the Empire's central trade hub, had seen countless executions over the decades, but none like this. A human, a mere woman, accused of conspiring with rebels and sentenced to public hanging, a barbaric punishment reserved for traitors. Yet it was not her alleged crimes that made this moment significant. It was who she had married, the man the Empire feared to even name. A hush fell over the crowd as Governor Rellan, the highest-ranking official of the sector, stepped onto the execution platform. He was a tall, aging man draped in ceremonial silver, robes his face lined with years of ruthless service to the Empire. He carried himself with the arrogance of a man who believed himself untouchable. Behind him, the executioner loomed. A monstrous cybernetic brute, Unit 07, a remorseless enforcer of Imperial law. His mechanical arms twitched as he adjusted the noose, his red photoreceptors glowing dimly in the dimming sunlight. Governor Rellan raised a hand for silence. The murmuring crowd obeyed. He glanced at the prisoner, then addressed the audience. People of Avaris Prime, loyal subjects of the Eternal Empire, today we witness justice. His voice rang across the square, amplified by the drones hovering above. This woman, Anya Velkor, stands guilty of treason against the throne. She harbored insurgents, plotted against Imperial rule, and conspired with known terrorists. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement. Others exchanged uneasy glances. The rebels had grown bolder in recent months, but the Empire never admitted fear. Instead, it crushed dissent with spectacle. Anya smirked. Terrorists? Her voice, though hoarse, carried strength. Or those who refused to kneel? Rellan's lips curled in irritation. You are in no position to argue, traitor. Anya took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping across the faces before her. Fear, sadness, indifference. Then, she lifted her chin and spoke a name that sent a chill through the gathered masses. Yaga. A single word, a single name. The effect was immediate. The murmur turned into a panicked ripple through the crowd. Imperial officers stiffened. Even the guards on the platform, trained to be unshaken, exchanged uneasy glances. The Butcher of Valtros, the Phantom of the Void, the Deathless One. The Empire had long denied that Baba Yaga was real, dismissing him as a myth, a ghost whispered among frightened soldiers. But the battlefield told a different story, of entire fleets disappearing, of warlords reduced to smoldering ruin, of entire planets going silent overnight. Governor Rellan's sneer returned, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his cold, blue eyes. You invoke the name of a ghost as if he will save you now. Anya's smirk did not fade. He's coming, the governor scoffed. He is dead. A silence stretched between them. Anya did not argue. She only held his gaze, unflinching. That, more than anything, sent ice through Rellan's veins. He turned sharply. Enough of this. Proceed. The executioner stepped forward. The crowd held its breath. The noose was tightened around Anya's neck, the reinforced fiber cold against her skin. Unit 07, methodical and emotionless, pulled the lever. The world fell. Silent as the platform beneath her feet gave way. The rope snapped taut. The Imperial banners fluttered in the night breeze, unaware that they had just sealed the fate of an empire. For in the frozen abyss of a nameless world, where ghosts slumbered and nightmares stirred, Baba Yaga would soon awaken, far from the bustling trade hubs and glittering core worlds of the Galactic Empire. There was a dead system. No name, no records, no traffic, just a void of forgotten planets and shattered ruins left behind by wars so ancient they had been erased from history. It was here, on a frozen world with no sun, that Baba Yaga had chosen to disappear. The warship, Black Sun, sat buried beneath ice and rock, a relic of another era. It was no ordinary vessel. It pulsed with an eerie, almost organic presence, as though the ship itself slumbered with its master. Inside, deep within the dark corridors, a man sat in stillness. A man the Empire believed dead. A man who did not forgive. The chamber around him was a tomb of metal and machinery. The only sound was the faint hum of ancient power cores and the slow rhythmic exhale of his breath, misting in the frigid air. His real name was forgotten. The galaxy only knew him by the whispers of dying soldiers and the ruins left in his wake. Yaga. Silent drone, no larger than a human skull, hovered before him. Its battered frame flickered with static as it transmitted a message that had traveled across the void, carrying the last moments of a woman the Empire had foolishly condemned, a woman named Anya Velkor, his wife. The transmission played in ghostly holographic light. Anya stood on the execution platform, her hands bound, her face bruised but unbroken. She spoke one word before the noose claimed her life. Yaga. Then the image cut to black. Silence. For a long moment, there was nothing. The ship itself seemed to hold its breath. The drone's flickering light cast long shadows over the motionless figure. Then, movement. Slowly, Yaga rose, metal joints, long dormant, flexed and tensed. The hum of the ship changed, growing, awakening. The dim lights in the chamber brightened to a crimson glow, mirroring the fire that now burned in his eyes. He did not rage. He did not weep. He only breathed, deep and controlled, as his mind aligned with the only truth that mattered. They had taken from him, now he would take from them. The ship seemed to sense his intent, its engines stirring to life. Data flooded his consciousness. A map of the Empire, its defense networks, its blind spots. Even after years in exile, his reach extended deep into their systems, Avaris Prime. He processed the details in an instant. Fleet strength, planetary, defenses, high-ranking officials. One name stood out among the rest: Governor Rellan, the coward who had ordered her death. Yaga clenched his fists. The motion was slow, methodical, like a predator testing its claws before the hunt. The ship responded, a deep thrum reverberating through its structure as weapons powered online, engines heating from frozen silence to burning readiness. It was time to remind the Empire why they had feared the dark, time to burn the name Baba Yaga back into the bones of history. The hunt begins. The Black Sun did not enter Imperial space with grand announcements or flashing weapons. It slipped through the void like a ghost, unseen, unfelt, until it was too late. The first to fall was an Imperial patrol fleet. A dozen ships vanished near the outer rim, leaving behind only wreckage and silence. Their distress beacons never activated. Their final transmissions were nothing but static. Then came the prison moon of Dryzos 9, a maximum security stronghold where the Empire kept those deemed too dangerous to execute, too useful to kill. They found the warden impaled upon his own command spire, his guards slaughtered with surgical precision. Every security feed wiped clean except one. A single message burned into the central data core: run. Across the sector, fear spread like wildfire. The Empire did not officially acknowledge Baba Yaga, but every officer, every soldier, every bureaucrat who had served long enough knew the stories. The Butcher of Valtros, the Phantom of the Void, the Deathless One. Fleet commanders whispered his name behind locked doors. Governors doubled their security, though they knew it would not help. Because when Yaga came for you, it was already too late. And then, Avaris. Prime received its first and only warning. Across every data network, every security feed, every planetary broadcast, A single transmission interrupted the Empire's grip on communication. A black screen. A voice, low, measured, like the echo of a blade being unsheathed. "I am coming." Then silence. On the bridge of the Black Sun, Yaga stood before the vastness of space. His cybernetic enhancements glowed faintly beneath the dark armor plating that covered his body. His eyes, once human, burned with an eerie intensity. Avaris. Prime loomed in the distance. The jewel of the sector, the heart of its governance. Tonight it would burn. And the Empire would learn what happens when you take from Baba Yaga. Avaris Prime had been called many things: the trade heart of the Empire, the seat of civilization in the sector, an impenetrable fortress. Tonight, it would be remembered as something else, a graveyard, the first strike. The first sign of the coming storm was the silence. At exactly midnight, Avaris Prime's orbital defense network, a fleet of automated sentry stations, planetary shields and long-range cannons, went dark. No alarms, no alerts. One moment the system was functional. The next, it was a corpse, its controls overridden by an unseen force. The officers at Central Command panicked. Who had done this? A rebel attack? A malfunction? Then the Black Sun emerged. It did not descend like a traditional warship. It did not announce itself with battle horns and grand displays of power. It simply arrived. One moment the sky above the capital was clear. The next, a shadow blotted out the stars. A single ship, dark, sleek, shifting like a living nightmare, its hull absorbing light, making it seem more like a wound in space than a vessel. For a heartbeat, the people of Avaris Prime stared. Then, the Daishi. Sky ignited, fire and blood. The first explosion shattered the Imperial Bastion, the military headquarters that had stood unchallenged for decades. Plasma lances speared through its core, setting off chain reactions in its fuel reserves. Fire consumed the structure in seconds, its upper levels collapsing as terrified officers scrambled for escape. There was none. Across the city, key government structures followed, each strike precise, surgical. Communications towers, military, barracks, defense installations. Within moments, the capital of Avaris Prime was in chaos. Imperial forces scrambled to respond. The city's anti-air turrets roared to life, targeting the Black Sun. But Yaga was already moving. The Black Sun twisted, unnaturally, shifting mid-flight in ways that defied physics, evading projectiles with the grace of a phantom. Then it retaliated. The turrets exploded, not from brute force, but from within, sabotaged. The Empire's own weapons turned against them. Panic spread like a plague. Who had done this? How had he already been inside their systems? The answer came too late. Yaga had been inside their defenses before they even knew he was coming. The army of one as the Imperial Guard struggled to coordinate. The people of Avaris Prime found themselves watching a horror unfold in real time. Single figure descended from the burning sky. He did not arrive in a drop pod. He did not deploy with an army. He walked through fire and smoke, untouched, as if the flames themselves feared him. His armor was black as the void, shifting with unseen technology absorbing the light. His eyes burned like twin embers, their eerie glow cutting through the night. He did not rush. He did not hesitate. He simply moved forward. The first wave of soldiers, 20 elite guards, opened fire. Plasma bolts rained down on him, bright streaks of energy screaming through the night. None touched him. His form blurred, shifting between moments, his movement faster than thought. He was among them before they could react. A single blade flicked from his gauntlet, a monomolecular edge, vibrating at frequencies that shattered molecular bonds. The first guard fell in 2 pieces before his brain registered death. The second was impaled through the chest. The third had his head removed with surgical precision. In less than 3 seconds, 20 soldiers were dead. The Black Sun, still above, sent no reinforcements. Yaga didn't need them. The city burns by now. Avaris Prime was fully awake. The streets were flooded with terrified civilians. Some ran, some screamed. Some simply watched in horror, trapped in the reality of what was unfolding. A nightmare had come to life. The Empire, so confident in its invincibility, had never prepared for something like this. Their holographic banners still flickered above the streets, bearing the Emperor's insignia. A symbol of power. Yaga walked beneath them, leaving a trail of death in his wake. Snipers positioned on rooftops, eliminated before they could take aim. Heavy artillery, hijacked and redirected to fire on their own men. Reinforcements sent to stop him, slaughtered before they could even raise their weapons. He moved like a shadow of inevitability, a storm with no mercy, and still, the people whispered his name. Yaga. Baba Yaga. The Deathless One. The stories had been true, and he had returned. The palace, the grand imperial citadel loomed ahead, the final stronghold of power on Avaris Prime. Inside, Governor Rellan stood trembling before his personal guard. His once pristine silver robes were drenched in sweat. His once unshakable arrogance had rotted into fear. This can't be real," he whispered. His hands trembled as he gripped the arms of his throne. Around him, his guards prepared for their last stand. Elite warriors, cybernetically enhanced, trained for every possible threat, except this one. A deep thud echoed through the chamber. Silence. Another thud. The walls shook. Then the doors imploded, and he stepped through. A figure wreathed in shadow and fire, his armor still slick with the blood of soldiers who had dared to stand in his way. His burning eyes locked onto Rellan, and the governor, once so proud, felt his bladder fail. "Baba Yaga," he stammered. Yaga did not speak. The room was filled with the cold hum of his weapon charging, a moment of silence. Then the slaughter began. The imperial citadel was the heart of Avaris Prime. A fortress of steel and obsidian, it had stood unconquered for centuries. Now it was a slaughterhouse. The grand throne room, once a place of power and authority, had become a battlefield of silence. The Imperial Guard, the elite warriors who had sworn to defend the governor with their lives, lay broken. Their blood stained the pristine marble floors, pooling around shattered armor and severed limbs. The only sound was the slow, rhythmic footsteps of Baba Yaga and the ragged, panicked breathing of Governor Rellan. No escape. Rellan had never truly believed in the stories. The legends of the Deathless One, of a phantom who erased entire fleets, of an unstoppable force who struck without warning. He had thought them fairy tales. But as he cowered upon his throne, his trembling hands gripping the gilded armrests, he realized the truth. The stories had been merciful. The real Baba Yaga was far, far worse. You don't have to do this," Rellan choked out, his voice a thin rasp. Sweat streamed down his face, his once pristine silver robes darkened with fear. The Empire will hunt you for this." Yaga did not respond. He kept walking, his shadow stretching long across the blood-slicked floor. Rellan's heart pounded. You want revenge? Fine. I'll give you whatever you want. Wealth, power, you can name your price." Still, Yaga said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. Rellan had already sealed his fate the moment he ordered Anya's execution, the moment he took from Yaga what could never be replaced. "Please," Rellan whimpered, falling to his knees. "I'm begging you." Baba Yaga finally stopped. He stood over the kneeling governor, taller than death itself, his burning eyes reflecting Rellan's pitiful, trembling form. Then at last, he spoke. "You begged her for nothing," and with that he raised his weapon. Rellan screamed, a single shot rang out, then silence. The governor's body slumped forward, his lifeless eyes still frozen in terror. The last ruler of Avaris Prime, the man who had condemned Anya Velkor to die, was no more, and Yaga never looked back. The fall of Avaris Prime with Rellan dead, the planet was doomed. Across the city, the Imperial command structure collapsed. The governor's highest officials had either been slaughtered in their homes or had fled like rats into the underground. The remaining soldiers did not fight. They ran. Civilians poured into the streets, watching in stunned disbelief as the banners of the Empire burned. The once untouchable fortress world was dying, not from rebellion, not from war, but from one man. The black sun loomed overhead, its presence a silent omen, and then the final transmission. Across every surviving Imperial frequency, across every Screen, every holographic display, one last message played. A black screen, a voice, low and steady, carrying the weight of a vengeance fulfilled. The Empire took from me. Now I take from them. This world belongs to its people. Live. Fight. Never. Kneel again. And then, silence. The black sun vanished into the void, leaving Avaris Prime to its fate. Epilogue. The name that haunts. The destruction of Avaris Prime shook the Galactic Empire. Governors whispered in terror. Admirals doubled their defenses. Even the Emperor himself, a godlike figure ruling from the distant core worlds, took notice. They had tried to erase him. They had tried to forget him. And yet, he had returned. The Butcher of Valtros. The Phantom of the Void. The Deathless One, Baba Yaga, and somewhere deep in the uncharted corners of space, a lone warship drifted silently through the void. Inside, a man sat in the dark, staring at an old, flickering image, Anya Velkor, smiling, alive, for the he. First time in a long, long while, Baba Yaga closed his eyes, and the galaxy trembled in his silence.